Last Thursday and Friday, I had a front row seat in Congress, watching from behind the scenes the political drama play out as the president won a huge political victory. His strategy to politicize the debate on Iran, pressuring 42 Democratic senators to stand with him and choose political allegiance over a vote, trampled the spirit of the Corker-Cardin legislation, which promised an up or down vote from the Senate. One must take your hat off to the administration's political operatives. The most consequential foreign policy decision of our time, which demanded that it be submitted to the Senate as a treaty requiring 67 votes, was in the end approved with just 42 senators and a Senate, and a significant majority of the American people against the deal. My job was to help remind senators, congressmen, and their foreign policy aides that this was not the end, but just the beginning of dealing with Iran on nuclear, human rights, and terrorism issues. Many Democrats who voted for the deal promised they would be willing to sign onto new legislation to strengthen the deal. They will be severely pressured by the president not to. The administration contends that it is their prerogative to limit any new sanctions so as not to threaten this deal. This needs to be challenged, if for no other reason than for our own national security interests. Democratic Senator Cardin of Maryland, who voted against this deal, said that the JCPOA does not limit imposing non-nuclear related sanctions regarding human rights and terrorism. I believe this is what should be legislated, and we should test the administration and Democrats to match their rhetoric with actions. A new total legislative package that includes ISA, the Iran Sanctions Act, new sanctions against terrorism and human rights abuses with real consequences, and complete public documentation of all Iranian transgressions, not just nuclear, needs to be legislated. In addition, all the enhanced security support for Israel should be included, with a strong reminder to state governments and legislators that the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions, Accountability, and Divestment Act of 2010, passed by Congress, granted states the authority to impose sanctions to combat Iran's nuclear and terrorist aspirations, and it is still in force. Why must Congress strengthen the nuclear deal with Iran? Iran was granted a sunset provision to acquire intercontinental ballistic missiles in 8.5 years that is a direct threat to American security interests. A single nuclear weapon detonated at high altitude over the United States would generate an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse that could black out our entire electrical grid and turn America into the Stone Age for years to come, fulfilling both the Supreme Leader's and moderate President Rouhani's promise of, quote, death to America. As for the horrific humanitarian catastrophe of migrants from Arab countries overwhelming Europe, the hundreds of billions of dollars over time in sanctions relief will feed the chaos and violence in those dysfunctional war-torn areas. This deal will be like throwing kerosene into the Middle East fire of refugees, which will doom Europe forever and threaten us sooner or later. Finally, the President and Secretary of State told us that this deal is not just about trusting Iran. Yet, according to former CIA Director James Woolsey, Secretary of State Kerry's assertions that the United States has perfect intelligence on Iran's nuclear program is not credible. Kerry incomprehensibly said, quote, "We know what they did, we have no doubt, we have absolute knowledge," end quote. Another former CIA Director, Michael Hayden, said that Kerry is, quote, "pretending we have some perfect knowledge about something that was incredibly tough an intelligence target while I was director, and I see nothing that has made it any easier," end quote. To prove this point, on Saturday, the head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization said, Iran has discovered an unexpectedly high reserve of uranium. This completely contradicts foolproof Western intelligence, which claimed that Iran would sooner or later need to import uranium. How many other things about this deal is our intelligence wrong about? Please keep an eye out for my next Jerusalem Post article, quote, "If Iran cheats and the U.S. doesn't act, can Israel still strike?"